Hello and welcome to GD Crash Course. I am Trubino, for those that don't know me, which will be most of you. I am a GD player and creator that's been playing since 2015. And well, I'm not quite, I've released a few levels. I'm not quite a master of the editor by any means. And I'm here because I want to teach you all about all of the triggers and how to use them. These tutorials would be how to use the triggers in a very basic sense. We'll get into more complicated ways to combine them and everything later. But initially, this is just going to be a tutorial on how to operate the triggers. As you can see, I have classified them. I have two big main classifications, which are action triggers, which are triggers that have a direct effect on levels. So let's say a move trigger moves an object off the level. A color trigger changing the background color changes the background of the level. All of that. And activation triggers activate other triggers under certain conditions or manipulate set conditions. For example, a spawn trigger. If I were to spawn, I don't know, these three triggers, the spawn trigger itself wouldn't have any effect on the level. It would activate other triggers. Or a touch trigger activates other triggers. On death triggers activate other triggers. So the count in all of these, that's why they're separate. As you can see, there are clearly a lot more of them that could be classified as action triggers because they have actual effects on the level and what you're seeing in the level. But that doesn't mean the activation triggers are any less important. Now, in this video, basically, I want to teach you on the most basic and important triggers that can be classified as action triggers, which are all of these. These we will see in another video because I think they're a bit too complex. And yeah, we'll get right into it right now. Quick disclaimer, if you do not have time or do not want to watch the entire video because it's extremely long, I understand. At the very end, there is a small section where I rapid fire everything I have explained on the entire video. I will put the timestamp up for you to see when I edit this. So just have that in mind. Okay, so as I said, I will be tackling the basic action triggers today. It's these ones, and we will start with the color trigger. Now, the color trigger is one of the simplest triggers there are. By the default, when you take it straight from the editor's toolbar, you can see there are a bunch of things. You can ignore this and this because they are mods. The rest we will talk about. So first, there's obviously the huge color wheel. This is to select the color you want. And this, whatever color you pick, will take effect on a color channel designated by number. Now, color channels are completely unrelated to group channels, group IDs. They're completely unrelated. They are not the same, they're different, and yeah. So whatever channel you put over here, it will have nothing to do with, I don't know, an object with the group 1. Now, over here we can see a few options. Let's start with fade time. Fade time, it's basically in the name. So here we're affecting color channel 1. So if we take a color block and we put it on channel 1, we can see that as soon as the the green line or the player goes through the middle of the trigger, which is this blue line. It's the activation line. The trigger will begin doing its thing. Will begin changing the color gradually from the color it was before to the color it has set over the time you specify here. You can see there's this line over here that basically it tells you in length how long the action takes. So all throughout this little stretch, this trigger is going to take its effect. I don't know if it's on by defect, but you can see here duration lines. You can see it in there. Now, color ID, we have some special color IDs, which are background, ground 1, ground 2, line object, 3D line, middle ground, and middle ground 2. They are for these things. They affect, well, the background affects the background. The ground 1 affects the ground. Ground 2 for when there are multiple layers to the ground. And line is for this line over the ground. 3D line is a special color channels made for, well, the 3D lines over here. But it's not very used nowadays. That's more of a legacy 1.9 feature. And object is the default color for the outlines of objects. Now, there's opacity, which it affects how. Doesn't affect the background or the ground or stuff like that, but on objects, on normal objects, it changes their opacity. It's in the name, so you can see it becomes transparent. You can change it at will, however you like. Just with this scroll thingy. It's a little sad it's not like this. You can't write the number itself. Maybe there's a mod for it, but it's not in vanilla GD. About the rest of the options, you have player color 1 and player color 2, which basically it overrides the color on the color wheel and changes it to whatever player colors you have put on. This is my player color 1. This is my player color 2. And yeah. Now about blending. Blending, it makes the color sort of additive. You can see they add together, and it's transparent by default. It basically takes the, I don't know if it's exactly like this, but I assume it takes the RGB values and they sum them to whatever is under them. So you can see if we make it black blending, 0, 0, 0. Anything plus 0 is the exact same thing. So you can see that if it's a very dim color, the result won't be too much changed. And yeah, that's basically all blending does. But copy color, so copy color, what it does, it completely changes this, and it adds a new interface. And what this does is basically you take to the color you want, the color channel you want to apply, you can copy the color from another color channel. So for example, in channel ID 4, I have green. So now color 1 will copy whatever color is in 4. And you can see it turns green. Now, something very important about this. When you do this, it does not copy the color of the target. So this is the target, this is the recipient. It does not just only copy the color the current recipient has, and it puts it on the color ID, the target ID. It tells the in this case the color channel 1 to completely copy whatever the channel 4 ID is doing. So for example, if I come here and change the color 4 to red, color channel 1 will change to red as well. Change it to blue, same thing. It tells the color channel 1 to copy, literally copy constantly whatever channel ID 4 is at. Now, onto this huge thing. What this does, this is a hue saturation brightness table. Basically change the hue, which is basically like moving around the color wheel with degrees. So for example, if we have let's say we make 4 red, and we make a 180 rotation, we'll end up at this blue. So we go over here, copy color 4, hue 180, and you can see we end up with that blue, even though 4 is red right now. Now, the exact same applies as earlier. If 4 changes at any point, 1 will change to reflect whatever state 4 is in. But in this case, with the transformations that we have specified here, so here 1 will be always the opposite color to 4, no matter what we choose. That's basically how hue works. Now the saturation. Saturation is basically how close you want it to be to grayscale. If you want it to be as colorful as it can be, or as close to being grayish but not really as it can be. Now you can see these two thingies are unchecked by default, and this number is 1. Basically, this takes the saturation of the color of the recipient color and it multiplies it by whatever number is here. So by default it's the exact same, which is multiplying by 1. You can multiply by 2, which is the maximum, but you can write whatever number you want, or by 0, which would make it a grayscale color. Now, so if you check this thing, you can see it suddenly defaults to 0. This is basically making it so instead of taking the saturation of the original color and multiplying it by this number, makes it so that it takes this saturation and it sums it with this number. So yeah, so this right now would be like whatever saturation the recipient color has minus 0.50, which I don't know exactly how that reflects on RGB. There are some transform, it can be calculated, but that's all you need to know. The lower this number is, the closer it is to being on the grayscale. About brightness. Brightness is basically how bright it is, how intense it is. Well, not really intense, but like how far it is from being like black. It's It's not a very great way to explain it, but it's basically that. And yeah, this number works exactly how we explained with saturation. It takes the recipient's color brightness, multiplies it by this number. By default, you can multiply by 2, multiply by 0, so it's completely black, and you can sum it instead. So one very important thing about this check mark is, for example, if we take 4 and we make it completely black, and we copy the color and we, I don't know, we make it 1.5 the brightness of the recipient, you can see this one is, okay, these are all 1. And I'm gonna make this 4. You can see their differences, but as soon as 4 turns black, we come over here, we do the calculation. So black is brightness 0, so 0 times 150 is 0, so it turns completely black. Now if we check this thing and instead we raise it by, I don't know, 0.4, let's say, this is a sum, this is not a multiplication. So if color 4 turns completely black, this will not be completely black because it will take brightness 0 and sum 0.4 to it. Yeah, that's basically how it goes. Now here you can see a little dumb example of color triggers just doing their thing. You can see here with blending and the different channels switching independently. You can make rainbows with it, like, I don't know, let's take 5, color D5. Let's make it 0.2, so it's a 0.1, so it's a very quick change. I'll change it to like this, like this, this. Later on we will learn how to make these things more automatic, so you don't have to like copy and paste all of this. That's something we will see with activation triggers. But yeah, as you can see now, I put down the block with 95, and it cycles through the colors of the rainbow. It's blending, we turn off the blending. If I make it, I don't know, 3 times 0, the colors snap. I make the fade time very large compared to how spaced out they are. It will look like a gray mess, so have that in mind. Now that that is over with, we will go with the next trigger, which is the move trigger. Oh right, I didn't explain this earlier, but all triggers, or almost all of them, have these things, which is the touch trigger options and the spawn trigger options. We will look at spawn trigger next time, but touch trigger basically replaces the blue line, the blue activation line, with a collision box, and basically as soon as the player hits that collision box, the trigger's effect will happen. You can see if I go under it, nothing happens, and if I jump into it, then it changes. Okay, back to the move trigger. This works with group IDs. What are group IDs, you may ask? They're basically just a label. They're like you assign a certain collection of objects a group ID, and they will all be affected with the same, by the triggers that that act to that group ID. It's very strange to explain. It just works like this. If you have a certain blocks with group ID 117, any triggers that that act upon that group will act upon those objects. It's just makes sense, right? All right. So you can see here there are a bunch of buttons. Let's go step by step. You can see the touch trigger and spawn triggers over here. The multi-trigger, which I didn't explain earlier, it basically allows it to, let's say we have this multi-trigger and it's, I don't know, very large. And for this we will need a extended collision. Right now it does nothing, as you can see, but basically the theory is that if you touch it multiple times, so here touch it once, exit the collision box, touch it again, it should activate multiple times, for as many times as I touch it. By default, if this is not activated, you can only activate it once, and it doesn't matter if you touch it again, it won't act again. The same applies for spawn trigger with multi-trigger, but we will get into that on the next video, as I said. So we have move X and move Y. Move X, positive number, moves right on the x-axis. Minus X moves left. Y, positive, moves up. Negative on the y-axis moves down. That's basically how this trigger works at its most basic, and what most people will use this for. You can see it also has a move time, which is like the fade time for the color trigger. And about the numbers you have to put here, you have to have in mind one very important thing. One block of distance is 10 units here. So 10, you can see from before that if I do 10 on the x-axis, and I put some blocks for reference. Actually, let me just play test no grid. Let me turn that off. Over here, 17. Oh right, the move timer is very large. You can see it moved one block to the right. So yeah, 10 multiples of 10s equals to the two amounts of blocks. There's one little thing with this, which is small step. And what this does is basically divide this number by 3 pretty much. So basically with a normal trigger you would need 10 units to move a block of distance. With a small step you need 3. So you can see 3 triggers moving 10 moves 1 block. Obviously it's more efficient to just do 30 spread up. It has its applications because obviously small step allows you to, well, make smaller movements, but for your average person it doesn't really have much use. Obviously you can move both on the x and y axis at the same time, a non-multiple of 10, on the negative on one and positive on another. As long as you remember that a positive number on the x-axis moves right, negative left, and positive on y moves up and negative down, you can basically start using this trigger just fine. Now, about easings. For this basically changes if the move time isn't 0, it changes basically how the movement looks. Let's see, let's just move it 20 to the right. You can see, let's make it smaller so it's easier to see. Yeah, you can see how it like eased into the movement and eased out of it. This is ease in and out. You can see it's completely different from none, which just starts moving then stops. You have only ease in, only ease out, and there are many more you can see over here. For to see exactly how those work, I recommend looking up the level easing options by the last secret. And here you can see all of the colors represent different types of easings. You can see here on this graph how they act. And this is going, half of this graph is basically the trip towards the destination and the other half is going back. So yeah, you can see the different shapes of the motions. Now into the finer details and options of this trigger, you have on the first row over here you have on lock X and lock Y to the player or the camera. Basically it does what it says. It locks the motion of the object will basically they will move with the player or with the camera. If you're not using camera triggers, which we will not explain right now, we will explain on a future video. Lock X player and lock X camera don't really differ much. But yeah, if you are using camera triggers, you need to have the distinction between the player's movement and the camera's movement, which is a lot easier to see with lock Y with player, which you can see if I get this over here. It follows the player's movement, and if I move this like that and lock it to the camera, you can see at first it doesn't move, but when the camera begins moving, then it moves. And you have this mod thingy, which is basically if you wanted to, it takes the movement and multiplies it by this number. So let's say I wanted to move half as fast as the player, I would put mod lock player X mod 0.5, which is half. Let's move this for visual clarity right now. And you can see it doesn't quite move as fast. It moves half as fast. This is normal. The slider only goes up to 1, but you can input whatever number you want. You can see here it goes 3 times as fast. And the same goes for Y movement. Let's see, if I do 2, you can see it's a lot more exaggerated. And if I do a very small number, close to 0, the movement gets multiplied. If you use negative numbers, basically the movement gets reversed. It copies it but in reverse. And and those are those options. Now these options are a bit more complex, so let's go over them. We already talked about small step. We only need to talk about target mode, direction mode, and dynamic mode. Well, but dynamic mode is an option for these two. So target mode, basically, I already have an example, so let's use that one over here. We enable this. These are examples for the triggers. So here we have this, which is, they're all group 1. Okay, let me just bring out a trigger and let's. So we click on target mode and we can see center group and target pause group. Obviously we have our target group, and basically our target group, as we said earlier, is whatever group we want to move. Center group is basically the reference object. So for example, if I want all of this to move to this block, but like I want this to be the middle and these to follow, I put this here. We have center group 2, so I changed this to group 2, and this one was group 2 before, so now we can see that it moves there. This is group 3, it moves to group 3. We can make it X only or Y only, and basically target mode makes it so that it moves from the center to the target block, like no matter where it is. So if I move this all the way over here, we can see that it snaps to that. Well, it doesn't really snap per se, but it moves towards it. Like this is the destination. Obviously, we can mess with the move time, and that will change the speed. The easing as well. Let's do a bounce out, because that's a funny setting. You can have it be the player 1 or the player 2, and it will move towards the player at the time without dynamic mode. It will move towards the position of whatever we want it to move to at the time of the activation of the trigger. With dynamic mode though, it changes and it follows the object wherever it goes. So let's see here, if I put player 1, you can see it followed me, like wherever I was going. Without it, it just moves to where I was when I hit the trigger. Here's another example of it. Here we can see this is group 14 and it's moving forward, since this is group 13 and it's targeting group 13 and dynamically and moving towards it, and it will always reach it by the end of its time, no matter where 14 moves. Now on to the next thing. Let me restore this. The next thing is direction mode. Direction mode is very similar to target mode, but instead of taking the object, the target pause group as the destination, it takes basically it draws a line between the center group, which in this case it's 12, which is this block over here, draws a line between it and the target pause group, and it moves a certain distance in the same units we use here. It moves a certain set distance in this line. So we can see here that it doesn't move all the way, it only moves 10 units, which is one block to the direction of this block. We can see if I move it over here, it will move the equivalent of 10 units in the direction from this block to this block. And yeah, that's basically how it works. And if we use dynamic mode, just as would happen with target mode, direction mode will also follow the block, and will, as we said, it will only move a set amount of distance we tell it to move. It will not move towards the block as a target. It will always move just a set distance. And I'm gonna show you these little examples. So here we are basically just moving the blocks 6, 8, 6, 7, 8, 9. We're moving 6 right one block, 7 up one block, 8 left one block, 9 down one block. Does that. We've already seen this example. Moves this. How this was set up earlier, it was like this, so moves this entire structure, having this as the center, and moves the entire structure like that. Yup. Move that more to the side so we don't die. Now this is the direction showcase from earlier. This is basically showing off that 10 normal units is equivalent to 3 times that on small step. And this is the target mode and direction mode with dynamic mode, and this is a showcase of the different easings. Oh, and one thing about move triggers that I didn't talk about. This thing, this silent thing, what it does really is just makes the move time 0, forces it to 0. Next up is the alpha trigger, which is one of the simplest triggers there are in the game. It's very easy. We pick a group ID, which let's use the next free one, which will be 117, just as before, because we created the previous example. And it basically changes the opacity of that object linearly through a specific time. It's literally just that. So here, let me disable this stop noise. Here we can see, alright, the opacity is 1. So all objects' opacities by default are basically 1. You pop this in and the opacity will always be 1 by default. So with this, we go from opacity 1 to opacity 0. You can see it disappearing. Yeah, it just makes it invisible or transparent, whatever you want it to be. See, opacity 0.27. Smaller fade time, and it stays like that. We can make it instant. We can make it invisible and just pop up into existence. Boop. Yeah, that's literally all there is. You can make it touch trigger as well, just as the other triggers, and we're gonna take a look at the examples I had set up. So here you can see we make this invisible, but it's invisible, but the collisions are still active. That's a very important thing. If it's invisible, it doesn't mean you cannot touch it. If we go over here, you can see it's invisible, but I die to it. It's invisible, but not intangible. We can make it translucent. We can make something just instantly pop out. But as we said earlier, it's invisible, but it's not intangible, so it still kills us. And we can make stuff fade in. And that's really all there is to the alpha trigger. Now onto the pulse trigger, which is... it's not exactly simple, but it's not hard either. So, basically, here you have two target types, which are the channel IDs, channel type and group type. Channel are the color channels over here, and groups are, well, the groups you can give to any object. So I set this to 117, 117. You can see it turns red. Something very important about pulse triggers, they are limited changes, let's say. So this does not change the object's color permanently. It's only for as long as the pulse trigger is taking effect. So you can see, let's see, 7. It takes effect, and as soon as it ends, it goes back to its original color. Now if we give this color channel 1 and we make color channel 1 pulse to red, you can see it's basically the exact same thing. Now, these three sliders, what are they? Fade in, well, it's the amount of time it takes for the object to fade into the color. So we can see if we put 1 second and the rest on 0, it will fade into the color, and as soon as it ends, just as before, it will snap back to the color it had earlier. Hold, basically, well, it holds the color in place. Just that. It changes it, and it remains at that value for the amount of time you specify here. Fade out, it goes from the complete color you chose over here to the normal color it had earlier. And you can combine these, and you can see here, fades in, holds the color, and then fades out. You can, I don't know, make it so it starts with a color, then fades out. You can only make it fade out. This is a very common practice, to just pulse colors like this. And yeah, you have the color wheel over here. You can choose HSV, which is like the copy color setting on the color triggers. And you can see this thingy. It can also be touch and spawn trigger like the rest. You can see this exclusive thing, exclusive button. What the exclusive button does basically is, you can see here, this one with exclusive. So we have this pulse trigger that holds black for 1 second and then fades out of it. So you can see it fades into black, and then this pulse trigger that comes later, it's exclusive and fades into white and then out of it. What exclusive does, it completely ignores other pulse trigger thingies. So you see it was green before, and then the moment this gets activated, it ignores whatever this was and takes the original color, which was green, and fades from that green into white and then out of it. You can see here this little line is from this black pulse, which outlives this one, so we get that little black thing. And here, without exclusive, what happens is it fades from this black into white. So without exclusive from whatever color it is right now into the new color, with exclusive from the original color into the new one. And here we have some more examples. This is the exclusive thing. This is just fade in, hold, fade out. Now until the next trigger, the toggle trigger. This is, I'm not sure if I should say this, but it's basically the simplest trigger there is. You take a channel, our example channel is 117, and what it does is basically it deactivates an object. We can see that just like with the alpha trigger, it turns them invisible, except there's no fade time. It's instant, but unlike the alpha trigger, it basically deactivates / erases the object. Erasing is a strong word, I'd say, but yeah, it deactivates it. It deactivates all collision, you cannot see it, that's what it does. And you can also activate the objects again, and they regain you can see them again, you can touch them again. So let's say we have, I don't know, set up like this. You can see I won't die crossing it, but as soon as they reappear, I do die to them again. And toggle triggers also work with other triggers. So let's say I have 10 on 118. This is 117, and it moves these spikes up. Oh no! Oh, oh my god! Oh no! I die. But if we do a little setup, like a little playful, old school setup with a touch trigger 117, and we have this key over here to represent it, we can see we don't get the key, the spikes rise up. We get the key, they do not rise up. Why? Because the toggle trigger basically erases the move trigger, and it does not take effect. Okay, now you can see here the rotate trigger. This one is a little bit complex, so let's doesn't show the trigger thing, but it does show you that over here. We have the target group and the center group. The objects become intangible. What we want as soon as they get reactivated, they regain their hitboxes around. So let's say we want this to be the center and this to move around it. Then we do this. This is okay. That's the other way around. Yeah, like that. Let's say we have here degrees, and here we have 4 rotations. So let's say one full rotation in 0.2 seconds. Oh shit! Right. And right, like that, and it happens. We can do. Does it accept decimals over there? Nope. You can only have 4 rotations over here. For the rest, you have degrees, which, yeah, 90 degrees. You can do 90 degrees, 180. Let's see, what if I do 450? Yeah, you can do more than 1 rotation in degrees, and As you can see, positive rotations move clockwise. Negative rotations move counterclockwise. Now, if you have something that happens if you have multiple centers, you should only ever have one single center object, because if you have multiple objects with the center group, the whole thing just doesn't work, because there are three positions to pick from, and it cannot decide. You must only have one. Now, if you want just one object to rotate around nothing, just to spin like this, you just add no center group, and yeah, do the whichever rotation you want. You can have as many objects as you want. If there is no center, they will just spin around their own center. Now, something to note is that let's see, let's have the same setup as before. This is 117, this is 118. Okay, so now it's like this. Yes, there's this thing, which is lock object rotation. Lock object rotation, what it does is it conserves the movement of the rotation, so these will spin around, but they will not spin. So that looks like that. So let's make it slower so you can notice it better. You can see they do not spin, they just rotate. Now, onto some more complicated stuff. There's aim mode and follow mode. Aim mode basically makes whichever, so you have your target group and your center group, so like this. But something very important to note for aim mode and follow mode, wait, there is one same, let me try this out. P1. Dynamic mode. Okay, yeah, so if you do not have a center group, you should have one rotate trigger per object. We will see that later. But if you have multiple objects with one common center group, aim mode basically lets you point, makes the objects point to the rotation target trigger. So in this case it's the player 1, it could be the player 2, it could be any other object. So let's say we have this with ID 19 over here, and we do 119. You can see it points to the target. We have offset, which is the offset in degrees. So 180 should point the other way, 90 should point over here, then offset it some 90 degrees to it clockwise. As you can see, minus 90 would be counterclockwise. And yeah, with dynamic mode, there's this easing thing, which is, let me play around with it. That's concerning. Yeah, I don't know how to manipulate easing, but right. Alright, you have different easings for your rotations also, for your normal rotations. And for aim mode, if it's not in dynamic mode, just like with target, when you targeted the player 1 with the move trigger, if it's not in dynamic mode, it's gonna point to where you are. Well, here we have some offset, but with 0 offset should point to where you are at the time of you activating the trigger. So let's move this down so I can have a reference. And see, it points to where I am at the time of the trigger activating. With dynamic mode and moved, there's this inf button. What it does is it changes the move time to -1 and makes the action infinite. So this will make it so this constantly points at you for an indefinite amount of time. With dynamic mode, if we had a set time, it would only point at us for as long as the trigger for as long as this time. And without dynamic mode, it basically turns into the time it takes for it to point to where we are at the time of activating the trigger. Now with follow mode, what this does, just as we discussed before, if we do not have a common center group for the different objects, we should use different rotate triggers for each object, but here we have the same center for these three, so we can just work like this. What this does basically is it copies the rotation from the rotating trigger ID. So follow mode, we can well, right here what it does is, without dynamic mode, it will rotate to match the rotation of the rotate trigger ID, which in this case it's player 1. It will rotate to match whatever rotation right now the player has, which right now it's just standing upright. Now upside down. If we jump mid-air, we'll have a specific rotation. And with dynamic mode, just as before, we put it in infinite for the showcase. It will begin copying the transformations. Well, no, not the transformations. It would actively see what rotation you have, and it will mimic it around its center. But if we had an idea rotating, let's say have this, which is 190, and now we're gonna make or 10 seconds. Let's make it to 10 rotations per second. 19, no easing, so it's a constant speed. And we make it copy the 119. We can see it's constantly copying its spin. That's what it does basically. And obviously we can combine this with all lock object rotation so that it excuse me? Or not, I guess. Right, I haven't been able to find anything regarding these things. They are supposed to limit the rotation, but like, I suppose the names hint at what they do, but all I was able to get was the thing just not moving. So I think I'm going to skip over that. You saw how everything else worked. You can competently use those. basically almost everything about the rotate trigger. And well, now we're gonna go over the examples I set up. So over here, so here you have a normal rotation of a single object, view rotating. Here you can see a bunch of spikes aiming at you, but they don't have a common center. So they have to use their own rotating triggers, because if not, they get completely messed up. Like, let me show you an example. If I add these, make them 43, 117, 117. You're gonna see how they get they start spinning erratically. So, but if you just use one rotate trigger for every single one of them, it works. Here they're copying the rotation, your rotation, and just as before, they do not share a center. They have their own centers, so you have to use a specific trigger for each one of them. Here they're copying the player's rotation. Here I make this block spin, and then this one with follow mode, dynamic mode. It copies the rotation of this block. So we can see here, like, it copies the exact same rotation. And here I made a little thingy. So here, all of these have the same center, but they have different offsets. So that's why I had to use a specific rotate trigger for each one of them. Take the same center, but this one, basically they're all pointed at the player, but they all have different offsets, and it makes this cool effect. And here it's showing off how locked object rotation makes the objects rotate but not spin. Now onto the scale trigger. This one, thankfully enough, it's easier than the rotate trigger because of how simple it is. There are a lot of options as well, but we will see. There's nothing to worry about. We also have a center group and a target group. So let's say if we only want to scale up one single object, we only need to worry about the target group. So let's see, 117. 117, and this, basically what this trigger does is it multiplies, or with this option divides the scaling of the object by this number. So if it's on 1, oh wait, I'm gonna disable these. If it's at 1, it will remain the same. If I make this 2, it will be twice as large on the x-axis. On the y-axis as well, you can make it more squished if you want. You cannot make it 0 though. It will automatically get set to 1 if you set it to 0. If you want something to get to shrink down and disappear, for example, you would have to, I don't know, over 1 second we're gonna make it very, very small, but not 0. So like that. And you can see that does the trick, but it will leave a very small object behind. It's not fully gone. If you want it to be fully gone, you just need to use a toggle trigger for that. And pop. It's no longer there. And yeah, you can, to shrink stuff, you can multiply by a value smaller than 1, but you can also divide by the values here. So if you want to make it twice as small, you want to make it half the size, you can just divide by value 2. Let's see. Use this. Let's make it instant so it's easier to see. And it works the same as just multiplying by 0.5. 0.5 and 0.5. Also has e-syncs. You can play around with them however you like. Just know that if the duration is 0, the e-sync really doesn't matter because it's instant. Okay, that's easier to see. Yeah. Now, also has a touch trigger thing. If you want, if you put in a bunch of objects, they will all be affected independently. But you can add a center, so in this case it's going to be 118, and now they shrink relatively to the center of the center object, the center group. They can also just divide, so dividing by 0.5, it's multiplying by 2. You can click this, only move. It does what it says in the name. It doesn't increase their size, but it moves them. It does move them. It's like, it's a little hard to explain. So you can see how they move when you scale them up. Their centers move. What only move does, it makes them so they don't get bigger, but they move to where they should be if you scale them up to 2. Now for relative scale and relative rotation, I will use some of the examples I have prepared over here. You can see normal scale up, scales down. You can see those scaling different axes independently. This gets bigger, then smaller around the center. You can make an object smaller here. What relative rotation does, it takes, you can see how this is rotated. So I wanted to scale as if it was like this. So let's see, it would be like this. I wanted to be like that, to do like this. But the problem is that it's rotated 45 degrees. So instead, what it would do without that would be like, not like that. Dang it. Warp is too useful. It would do something like this. Not exactly, but let's just show you what it does without relative rotation. So if I turn it off, you can see it just it gets expanded like this. But with relative rotation, it takes the center's orientation, so you can see it's pointed towards there. That's its new coordinates. It's like its new reference of rotation. So now for these objects, up is pointing to where the orientation of this block is pointing. So now with this activated, it works as if it would like this, without relative rotation. See? I've rambled a little bit, but that's how it works. Here's another example of only move. Here, this one doesn't have only move, gets scaled, gets stretched and moved. Only moved. Well, it gets only moved. Oh, and about relative scale, I really wasn't able to find anything about it. Like, I tried making examples and stuff, it really didn't seem to change anything. Maybe it does if things get scaled with triggers instead of manually, but yeah, I wasn't able to find anything. Now to the next two triggers, the follow and follow player Y triggers. We're gonna start with the follow trigger. This one, it's also very simple. Basically you have an object, let's say this one, and well, let's start with this one, group 117, and we wanted to move like 30 blocks, for example. Right now, this is our example. 30 blocks, like that, like this, bring this over here, and yeah, it just moves normally. Now let's say here the necessity of a follow trigger is less visible, but we will see later how it's actually useful for some more complicated movements. If we want another object to move the exact same way, we can, well, it doesn't have to be just one, it can be many. We take these, give them their own group, and then follow, and then the target group is what we want to move, and the follow group, well, like that. The follow group will be the one doing the actual moving, like the original movements. And now you can see Xmod 1. This is the movement. Let's see it. So it copies the movement if we move it up and down as well, like 10, 0, 1, minus 10, like that. You can see it will copy the movement on both axes. Now, this, just like before with the movement triggers, it was lock X and lock Y. We have a multiplication of the movement, which basically takes the movement of this object and multiplies it by this number. So here it takes the movement and halves it on both axes. We can make it double if we want on one axis and half on the other. Really, it can be whatever you want. Negative numbers, just like before, it copies the movement but in reverse. And yeah, that's basically it. The move time signals for how long the follow trigger is active. Has nothing to do with the original movement. Really changing it doesn't really change the speed or anything. It only changes for how long these objects are gonna copy this one's movements. As spawn and touch triggers, just like the rest. Yeah, that's basically what it does. Now we're gonna see some examples I prepared. Here you can see a great example. Like here, we copy this spike's rotation on these faces, and yeah, this is a lot more. It would be a lot more of a hassle to have to like copy this, give all of them their own groups and make them rotate around those. We just make this one rotate, or these ones, because they're all rotating. We make them copy one of the spikes movement, and yeah, they rotate because they're really just copying the movements. Here we can see the, so 81 is moving, one block up and one block to the side. 80 is copying it but halved. 82 is doubling the movement. We can see the effects here. And here we can see this object is copying. This one is gonna move to the side, up and down, up and down, up and down. This one is only gonna copy its X movement. This one is only gonna copy the Y movements. And here we can see how the negative follow works. Oh, what happened? Okay, 89 should work. Oh well. That's concerning. Okay, so let's just 2 minus 1. Rotate. This is rotating. This is 89. Let's see. We can just make a new one. So 117. 117 over here. I don't know where it broke, but follow. And now it's working. Okay, I don't know what happened there, but yeah, no. Really, this is just showcasing how negative follow reverses all of the movement. Now onto follow player Y. It's very simple as well. Well, it's a little bit more complicated, but it's just because there are more variables. So one might think, why do we need a follow player Y having in the move trigger a lock to player Y? Why? Well, because I go over here, 118, 118. Jesus. Because let me move this and disable this. Ah, right. So you can see how it copies the player's, doesn't really copy its exact Y placement, it just copies how it changes. With the follow player Y, what happens is, let's see, 1 second, 118, it's 118. Alright. It snaps down to the player's position. And there are multiple things we can touch with this. We can touch the speed at which it snaps into position. We we can put on a max speed. You can see it targets the player's position, but it has like a speed cap at which it gets there. Offset, it's like offset. It's literally an offset in the y-axis. Oh, that's a word, but you get me. So basically, it gets to the player position, but offsetted by this amount. So it works like with the move triggers. 10 units is a block, so offset in the y-axis, positive is up, negative is down. So you can see it moves below us like that, and above us like that. Always having in mind the player position. Now there's this interesting thing, that's delay, that is exactly that. If the player moves, this moves, but with a little bit of delay. We can see the effects in the examples I have prepared over here, like this. Here we can see the difference between move lock to player Y and follow player Y. Here we can see a bunch of objects. If you have many objects, they will just they will all snap to the player's position. Just because of they're in the same group doesn't mean they will conserve their shape. And you can see they have an offset of 10. And now here you can see I jump, and this jumps after me because it has a delay. And the way I make this conserve its shape is I make only this block follow the player Y, and the rest are following that one block, so they copy its movement. And you can see here me messing with delays, having a little bit of fun. Now onto the stop trigger. This is secretly 3 different triggers in one, but it's also pretty simple. We'll go straight into the examples because they're very intuitive. They're just very easy to see. What the stop trigger does is basically, instead of affecting straight objects, it affects other triggers. So in this case, this isn't group 108. It's this trigger that's affecting this blocks. So you can see they start spinning, and as soon as we hit the stop trigger, the stop trigger tells this rotate trigger to stop what it's doing. It's as simple as that. It works on literally any trigger with some kind of easing or time duration. You can see here we can instead pause it and it stops, and then resume it and it continues. You have to have in mind though that when you do that, the duration line should be extended. Like when you pause it, let's say this is 2 seconds, whatever time, let's see what time happens, it's like 0.30 something, yeah, 0.30 something seconds, and then it stops for a set amount of time. It will not stop here. It will keep going because it was paused by an amount of time. So it should be also, the duration light should be the light by this, because here it's inactive, it's paused, it's not stopped. This is when it resumes. It's not just starting over. it's picking up where it left off. So it stops and it resumes and it continues. Here we can see it also works with color triggers. We can see how here in the preview it doesn't show for some reason, but here the lower one doesn't get affected, but the higher one does. And we can see how the lower one gets to the destination color faster, and the one waits for the resume trigger. We'll talk about use control ID when we talk about spawn groups, spawn triggers, because right now they're not useful to us. Now until the last three triggers, they are set the TP trigger. These two are very simple, unlike the rest. They do not they don't really take action on any specific block. They change the not really the physics, but they change how the level plays. So you can see here the time warp. It's really just a slider, makes the time go slower, faster, or go back to normal. Gravity, it's just, there's a slider as well. I believe you cannot make gravity 0. I think I have tried before and failed, but yeah, I think the minimum is this, 0.1. You can make it only take effect on player 1, only take effect on player 2, and if you have touch trigger, only on the player that touches the trigger. So we can see here how it goes woo, and then it gets really strong. And here, these only affect the player touching them. I mean, not touching in the moment of touching, but the effect the player that touched them. And here the TP trigger is basically the target group ID is the object you want to get teleported to. Let's see, let me that. And then you have the gravity, which you can force the TP to spew you out at normal gravity or reversed, or you can make it toggle and it switches depending on the gravity you had before. You also have static force, which applies a set force on you when you exit. You can see it gave me a little bump, or with additive it sums the force. So here you can see which with each teleport I get summed that amount of force until I get a lot of it. We have a few other options here: smoothies, save offset. Don't really know what these do, but they're not too important. There's ignore X, which makes you TP only on the Y-axis. Ignore Y, which only on the X-axis. Instant camera makes the camera snap. Snap ground makes the ground snap too. When you TP to another game mode, I believe. I don't know. I have never needed it. And redirect dash, as far as I'm concerned, it's only for platformer mode. And yeah, that's basically all of these basic triggers you might want to use to make a normal level. Normally, the most basic levels only use these triggers. You can use scale too if you're feeling funny, but these are more niche. They're for more specific use cases. Finally, to sum up, I'm gonna go over everything real quick for all of you that don't have, I don't know how long this video is gonna be. Basically, here you can change let's see, you can change the colors, change the time it takes for the colors to change, the opacity of the colors. You can set the colors to the player colors. You can make them blending, copy colors, use the hue, such the HSB bar. You can copy another color. You can copy that color's opacity if you want. Make it touch and spawn trigger, multi-trigger. For the move trigger, you move a certain target. In the x-axis, positive equals moving to the right, negative to the left. On the y-axis, positive up, negative down. You can lock the player or the camera, in the x or y axis, and you can set how much you want it to move compared to the player or the camera. You have target mode that it makes a target move to a target group to a target pause group, which can be the player. You can make it X only, Y only, and you can have a center. You have a direction mode, which is very similar, but it only moves a set amount of distances instead of moving straight to the target. You have small steps, which basically makes the movement 3 times, not 3 times small, but it makes the movement 3 times as small. And dynamic mode for direction, and target mode for with the target pose is moving. Now for alpha trigger, you can change the opacity of a set group and the fade time. The pulse trigger, you can change a color ID or a group's color. You can make it fade in. You can make it maintain that color and fade out. It doesn't have to. You don't need to add all of them. You can only have something fade into a color, fade out of it, and the color will only stay active for as long as the duration of the pulse trigger's action. You can put in a specific color, and you can use the HSB and copy another color. Then we have the toggle trigger, which allows you to deactivate or activate blocks or triggers. The rotate trigger, that allows you to rotate a certain target objects around the center with some easing of your choice. You have a movement timer. You can move a certain amount of degrees. You know how to use degrees. 360 is a full rotation, 180 is half. Positive is clockwise, negative counterclockwise, and here you have full rotations. A mode makes a certain object look towards another specific object. With dynamic mode, you can make it actively seek that object. So if this is here and this is here, this will rotate to look at it. But if it moves without dynamic mode, it won't like actively seek it while it's moving. And follow mode, it copies the rotation. So like if this one is rotating and this one has follow mode, if it doesn't have the dynamic mode, it will just get to whichever rotation it's in a certain amount of time, and if it has dynamic mode, it will basically copy the rotation for as long as the rotate trigger is active. And then there's lock object rotation that allows you to move objects around other objects without having them spin. Now the scale trigger, you can scale up or down objects by this number, or it multiplies the scaling by this number, or you can have it divide. you can have a target group and a center group, duration, easing, only move if you don't want the objects to stretch, and relative rotation in case you have you have a rotated center and you want it to act as if it wasn't rotated. Yeah. Follow trigger allows an object to copy another object's movement on the x-axis and y-axis with whichever intensity you want. You can even make it do the opposite movement. The slider only goes up to 1, but you can put in whichever number you want. You have a move timer, which is for how long the follow trigger will be active. Follow player Y. You have a speed of movement, a max speed for which the object snaps to the player's Y position. Here you can put in the group, the time the trigger will be active, the offset which acts like the movement trigger. 10 units is one block, positive is up, negative is down, and a delay time. Then we have the stop trigger, which acts upon other triggers, and it just permanently stops them. With a pause option, you can simply pause them, and if there's a trigger that's paused, you can resume it later, but not if you stop it. You cannot resume it later, only if it's paused. Then you have time warp, which you can change the flow of time in the level. You can change the gravity, which has a minimum of 0.1. I don't know the maximum, but if I recall correctly, you could go up to 3. But sometimes when you get back to the editor, it changes back to 2. And teleport allows you to teleport your player to a specific object. So it must only be one object with a group, or else it will freak out. You can set the gravity, or set the gravity to normal, flipped, or make it toggle. So if you're going up, it will put you down. If you're going down, it will make you go up. Smoothie uses smooth and save offset. I don't know what they do. Ignore X only teleports you on the Y-axis. Ignore Y only teleports you on the X-axis. Instant camera, it's on the name. Snap ground, it's on the name. Redirect dash is for platformer mode, which I don't know much about. Static force allows you to set a force that will be given to your. It will like allow your cube to be bumped up by a specific force if it's positive, down if it's negative, and you can add the force instead of being set. And redirect force, I believe this is for platformer mode as well. I don't know much about it. That's basically it. So that's all there is to know about these triggers. Well, not all there is to know. You can combine them and all of that. I mean, as they are basic individual uses. I will explain things you can do when you combine them in the future. I'm sorry if this was a little bit rambly. This is like the first kind of video, not really the first kind of video I do explaining stuff about GD, but it's the first time I do explaining so many things. And well, I hope you enjoyed. I hope you found it useful. In the next video we will cover what I call activation triggers, which includes spawn trigger, undead, touch, and all of these, the event and sequence triggers. And later down the line we will take a look at the rest. But yeah, I believe with these triggers you can make any competent basic level. Maybe you would need the spawn trigger. I mean, spawn trigger you never really need it. It's only to make optimizations, which I mean, it's pretty important, but still. this you should be able to play around with the editor and have fun and make whatever you want. If you're not too advanced into the game. We will talk about an advanced follow and all of these and the keyframe trigger later. I think they're rather advanced, so we'll save them for another video. And yeah, that's basically it. See you in the next video.